Good morning. Good morning, all of you. Good morning. The second part of procurement. Uh, Today's session is about procurement process, institution, and regulatory framework for public procurement. Here, yes. So this is the public procurement procedure. The public procurement procedure start from the procurement preparedness and planning, step one, and it goes to invitation of bids, receiving bids, closing bids, and opening of bids. Then bid evaluation, contract award and debriefing, and finally contract administration. All these steps are monitored and regulated by this one, institution and regulatory framework for public procurement. There are some acts, amendment, circulars, institutions, organizations which are controlling and monitoring all procurement process of the government organizations. Our focus today is on this institution and regulatory framework for public procurement. The institution and regulatory framework for public procurement. So this is our today's session. First, we are going to discuss about institutional framework. Under this, we have to discuss procuring entities and procurement monitoring and regulating authorities, procurement committee under this. And regulatory framework, we have to discuss two things, domestic and foreign. Domestic, uh, under domestic statutes governing procurement actions and national procurement guidelines, manual and regulations. In foreign purchasing, procurement, procurement provisions in foreign financing agreements, and uh, procurement guidelines of international organizations. We will start from here. Institutional framework, procuring entities. Right. Institutional framework. This might include the institutions that would primarily engage in planning, executing, monitoring, evaluating, and regulating the procurement actions of public sector organizations. Such institutions in the context of Sri Lankan public service will include procuring entities. Procuring entities means the organization which is going to procure. So for example, university. If university is going to purchase something, stationaries or photocopy machinery or construction of building, then the university will be considered as procuring entities. Procuring entity. And procurement committee. The committee, the committee consists of few members who are responsible for the procurement of the procuring entity. Right? The group of people who are responsible for the procurement. It consists of few people. right? Procurement committee. The procurement committee is responsible for the whole procurement of such uh, procuring entity. And procurement monitoring and regulating authorities, say National Procurement Agency, National Procurement Commissions. So these are the examples for the monitoring, right? Procurement monitoring and regulating authorities. So see, the institutional framework, this might include institutions, organization, right? That will primarily engage in planning. So planning the procurement, executing the procurement, monitoring the procurement, evaluating and regulating the procurement of the government organization. All are coming under institutional framework. Right. Now, first we look at on procuring entities. Procuring entities simply mean the organization, the government organization, which is going to, which is planning to purchase something. It's called procuring entity. School, university, DS office, or any other government organization in our area, in our country. Procuring entity. Procuring entity means a government ministry. It may be in the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense, provincial council, government department, Department of Examination, Department of Forest, and Department of Elections, statutory authority, government corporations, government owned companies, local authority like Pradesh Sabha, any subdivision thereof, any subdivision of these things, this organization, or any body fully or partly owned by government of Sri Lanka, or where government of Sri Lanka has effective control of such body, right, that engages in procurement. In simple terms, procuring entity means any government organization which engages in procurement. Responsibilities of procuring entity. What are the responsibilities? If a university wanted to construct a building, so what is the responsibility of the university? That's procuring entity. Procuring entity is engaged in and responsible for completing all procurement preparedness activities. Completing all procurement preparedness activities. Getting legitimately appointed procurement committees, right? So the procuring entity should legally should have a legally appointed procurement committee. We will study in detail about the procurement committees. Procurement preparedness and planning through the preparation of, for example, advanced procurement action, a master procurement plan, procurement time schedule, procurement implementation plan, total cost estimate, standard bid documents, everything. Uh, these are the examples for documents engaging in the procurement process of government organizations. The preparedness of all these documents is the responsibility of procuring entity. Executing the other stages of procurement process in coordination with procurement committee, right? Executing stages of procurement process in coordination with procurement committee. The procurement committee is a more powerful committee in the procuring entity. So based on their coordination, based on their leadership of procurement committee, the procuring entity will follow up the stages in the procurement process. Adhere to and implement the regulatory requirements and recommendation posted by regulatory and law enforcement authorities. So the government, on behalf of the government, the treasury will give some instructions, right? And time to time, uh, the regulatory bodies will give some circulars, instructions. So the procuring entity is responsible is to adhere to the regulations or instructions given by that such organization. The officer in charge of a procurement action, such as head of the department and project directors. In case of universities, a vice chancellor is the head of the department. He is responsible for the procurement action. Therefore, he will consider as officer in charge of procurement. The officer in charge of a procurement action, such as head of the department and project director, together with assistance of procurement specialist, even though the vice chancellor is responsible for procurement, he will delegate their duties to one of his assistants. Together with assistance of procurement specialist, consultant, and other staffs shall be responsible the following: maintenance of necessary communication with all stakeholders of procurement process. You know, in the government procurement process, there are considerable stakeholders will be concerned with. So it is responsibility of the procuring entity to communicate the relevant matters with the stakeholders. Preparation of invitation for pre-qualifications and its submission to the technical evaluation committee for review and approval. And the procuring entity will prepare documents and determine the pre-qualifications, eligibility criteria for tenders, bidders, and all such documents should be approved by the technical evaluation committee, reviewed and approved by the technical evaluation committee. These arrangements should be lies with the procuring entity. Preparation of the draft bidding document, including specification and submission of the same to the technical evaluation committee for review and approval. Right, draft bidding document. I will show you today examples for bidding documents. Preparation of data and information prior to the evaluation report. Right. Issuance of invitation and facilitating the meetings of technical evaluation committee and procurement committee. So there are so many committees and there will be so many meetings. So all that meetings should be scheduled by the procurement entity. Circulations of minutes of meeting of technical evaluation committee and procurement committee. Right. So the committees, once the meeting has finished, they have to prepare the minute of the meeting. The circulation of that meeting responsible is lies on procuring entity. Provisions of any request assistance to technical evaluation committee and procurement committee on any request made by them to facilitate the procurement process and all other matters in identical here too. So the procurement evaluation committee, technical evaluation committee and procurement committee sometimes need assistance, help. Sometimes they need information for the regarding the procurement. So that time, procuring entity is responsible to give what are the things they wanted regarding the procurement. So that's about the procuring entities. Now we will move to the procurement monitoring and regulating authorities. So procurement monitoring and regulating authorities. National Procurement Agency. National Procurement Agency. It is not currently available. Right? National Procurement Agency was the principal authority for the public procurement in Sri Lanka by formulating, amending, interpreting procurement regulations. The National Procurement Agency issues guidelines and manuals, standard bidding documents, and evaluation methodologies, standard contracts, and specifications. So there was a agency organization. It's called National Procurement Agency. This agency has issued the guidelines, right? Guidelines, manuals, standard bidding documents, evaluation methodologies, standard contracts, and specifications for the purpose of for the effective monitoring of government procurement, government purchasing. So all the governments should should in line with guidelines issued by the National Procurement Agency. From 2007, the operation of National Procurement Agency has been brought under the Treasury and executed through the head of the through the Department of Public Finance of the Ministry of Finance and Planning. So Ministry of Finance and Planning was undertaken the function of National Procurement Agency. According to the procurement manual issued by the National Procurement Agency, the responsibility of the procurement actions shall be vested with the secretaries of the respective line ministries. Responsibility of the procurement actions shall be vested to the secretaries of the respective line ministries, who are deemed to be the chief accounting officers such ministry. And finally, all the responsibilities will end up with the chief accounting officer, that is secretary to the relevant ministry. A typical public procurement authority are engaged in following activities: formulation of procurement policy and regulations. Right? The public procurement authorities will formulate procurement policy and regulations time to time based on the requirement, based on the changes in the environment. Time to time they will formulate. And procurement prior reviews and no objections. Timely reviews like audit, procurement reviews. These reviews can be made before the procurement and sometime after the procurement. Procurement oversight and post reviews, procurement supervisions, right? Oversight. And procurement audit. Are there anything happened with violating the national procurement guidelines, or are there any incidents happened, fraud incidents in procurement? And the procurement complaint review. If anybody make petitions against the procurement of an organization, the National Procurement Authority or any other relevant regulatory bodies of the government will be take the petitions and complaints and it start the investigation. The National Procurement Agency as the procurement and monitoring and regulating authority in Sri Lanka, right? The National Procurement Agency is the procurement monitoring and regulatory authority in Sri Lanka. It shall, right, monitor the performance of procurement committee and technical evaluation committees, conduct random post procurement reviews, random check on the procurement reviews, examine on random basis the regularity of attendance at meetings. So there are committees, no, like procurement committee and technical committee. So they have to check. Then NPA will check, do they have a regular meeting with regard to the procurement, and they will check the attendance, regularity of attendance at meetings, and whether the decisions taken by the members of such committees in accordance with the accepted procurement procedures and these guidelines, right? So they will check all the procurement committees are following their guidelines and manuals issued by them. If it is established that the members were negligence of duty by the members of these boards, committees. Inactive, negligent, inactive, or irresponsible in the conduct and the performance of duties at procurement committee and technical relation committees, resulting procurement delay. National Procurement Agency may at its sole discretion, right? If the National Procurement Agency found anything or any officers who are negligent their duties or inactive or irresponsible regarding the procurement, or they are following misconduct, and the National Procurement Agency may advise the members to expedite the procurement process by rescheduling procurement time schedule. If NPA observe that the procurement process is very too delay, then this NPA can involve and they can instruct them to reschedule their procurement plan. Procurement plan mean procurement time schedule mean it's a timetable. So on what date, what activity is going to be taken. Advise the members to adapt a corrective measures if they are go wrongly, and NPA can advise them to correct measures. Replace such irresponsible members. Replace if any members are responsible or act as a dummy persons, dummy officers, the NPA will replace the officers and cancel the name of members of the panel. Sometimes it has an authority to cancel the name of the members in the procurement committee. Now we'll discuss about procurement committees. A procurement committee is a committee which is individually and jointly responsible to manage the entire process of procurement in coordination with procuring entity. Right? So the members in the procurement committee are individually and jointly responsible to manage the entire process of procurement. So the all sole responsibility of the procurement, the power is vested with the procurement committee. The procurement committee will take decision regarding the procurement. The procurement committee should work with the procuring entity. The following are the types of procurement committees in Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan public sector organizations. Typically, a government organization has 5 types or 6 types of procurement committees based on their level of expenditure. Number 1, the cabinet appointed procurement committees. Cabinet appointed procurement committees, standing cabinet appointed procurement committees, ministry procurement committee, department procurement committee, project procurement committee, and regional procurement committee. Before we discuss one by one about the type of procurement committees, I will show you their limits. Right. The cabinet appointed procurement committee will be appointed for the any purchases, any procurement of these values, 250 million. If it is a local funded project, government funded project, any procurement is funded by the local government, the government of Sri Lanka, that exceed 250 million, the procurement will be goes to cabinet appointed procurement committee. In case of foreign funded procurement projects, if it is more than 600 million, again it will goes to the cabinet appointed procurement committee. And if any purchases of government funded projects, it's below 250 million, below 250 million, if foreign funded projects, it's procurement below 600 million, it will be goes to Ministry Procurement Committee. And if the procurement funded by the government of Sri Lanka, which is less than 100 million, up to 100 million, or if it is funded by the foreign projects up to 300 million, so this kind of purchases will goes to project procurement committee or department procurement committees. And if funded government funded project purchases procurements up to 10 million, or if it is government funded projects up to 10 million, both 10 million will goes to the regional procurement committee. So there are mainly how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 committees. In addition to these 5 committees, standing cabinet appointed procurement committee is there, right? So based on the value of the procurement, the procurement committee will be appointed. Now we'll discuss first the cabinet appointed procurement committees. Cabinet appointed procurement committee. You know what is cabinet, right? The cabinet will be appoint a procurement committee to purchase in the government organizations. If the value exceeds 250 million of government funded projects, normally cabinet appointed procurement committee will be established. Under the delegated authority by the cabinet of ministers, the National Procurement Agency, now it has been taken by the Treasury, shall appoint the cabinet appointed procurement committees to undertake high value procurement. As I mentioned you, the procurement value goes beyond 250 million funded government funded project. The procurement should be goes to the cabinet, right? The number of members in a cabinet appointed procurement committee shall not be less than 3. So it has 3 members. There shall be a chairperson of the committee. There are 3%. Out of 3%, 1 person will be act as chairman. The secretary or an officer not less than the rank of additional secretary of the land ministry shall be the member of the committee, cabinet appointed public procurement committee. So 1 person is a chairman, and another person, another member should be the secretary or the equivalent person in the respective line ministry. The liaison officer, sometime in your own words, you can say him as a coordinator, a communication officer, right? The liaison officer for procurement, or where the liaison officer is not available, a senior officer from the line ministry shall be the non-member secretary of the cabinet appointed procurement committee. So in summary, there are 3 members. Out of these 3 members, 1 member should be act as a chairman of the committee, and the secretary of the line ministry will be a member. In addition to these 3 members, and a liaison officer will be participate in that meeting as a non-member secretary. He is not the liaison officer, is not the member of the procurement committee, but he will be participating in the meeting. Now we'll see standing cabinet appointed procurement committees. Standing cabinet appointed procurement committees. in extraordinary situations. Right, keep it in mind. Extraordinary situation, not all the times. In extraordinary situations, a ministry may submit a cabinet memorandum specifying the special circumstance. So why they want the standing cabinet appointed committee? They have to give justification, which require a deviation from the general procurement procedure in order to meet such situations, and shall seek cabinet approval to appoint standard cabinet appointed procurement committee, indicating the limits of procurement. Right. So there are some situations where the government organizations are unable to follow the general guidelines for procurement emergency. So that time, uh, the standard cabinet appointment committee can be established. At the time of requesting for appointment of this committee, the particular minister, cabinet minister, should be submit a justification for that. Standard cabinet appointed procurement committee may be justified where expeditious processing of procurement is necessary. So speed of procurement process is important. Extraordinary speed decisions have to be taken for the procurement of goods, service, or works. Sometimes extraordinary speed, sometimes tsunami. So tsunami or landslip or so some sort of man-made disaster. That time they want to take an immediate decisions. That time they can appoint this committee. Supplies are immediately required to avoid acute shortage in the market, which have a very short validity period. The price of goods fluctuate frequently. Items are needed to purchase very frequently without significant changes in its specification. Security considerations warrant. A project maintains a large number of bid packages spread over a long time span. So in these circumstances, the standing cabinet appointed procurement committee can be appointed in the following situations. Now we will see the third type of procurement committee, that is Ministry Procurement Committee. Ministry Procurement Committee. The Chief Accounting Officer, Secretary to the Ministry, Chief Accounting Officer may appoint Ministry Procurement Committee annually for different agencies or different categories or components. Right? The Ministry Secretary will appoint the Ministry Procurement Committee for the procurement under the value up to 250 million. No? And Ministry Procurement Committee shall have 3 members. It has also 3 members. The Chief Accounting Officer or an officer not less than the rank of Additional Secretary to the line ministry shall be the chairperson. So normally, the secretary to the minister will be the chairperson. Among 3 members, the ministry secretary will be there. Where the ministry is not procuring entity, ministry of is not going to purchase, but some other departments under the ministry will be purchased. Where the ministry is not the procuring entity, one member shall be the head of the department or the project director of the procuring entity. So we know that under the ministry there are so many departments. Each department has a head. So in case of departmental procurement or project procurement, the head of that department will be a member in that committee. The third member shall be the from outside the ministry who is conversant in subject of procurement. So the third person will be come from outside of external to the ministry and that person should be an expert in procurement process in government organizations. And the chairperson of the technical evaluation committee or his nominee from amongst the member of the technical evaluation committee shall participate as non-member at all meetings in the ministry procurement committee to make clarifications. In summary, the ministry procurement committee has 3 members, one member, the chairman is the secretary to the minister, and the head of the department is a member, and external to the ministry who is expert in the procurement. In addition to that, the chairman or his nominee of technical evaluation committee should participate in that meeting to give any clarifications and procure. The request for the appointment of ministry procurement committee shall be made to chief accounting officer, that's mean secretary to the ministry, by the head of the department or project directors as appropriate. Now we'll see uh, the cabinet, the chief accounting officer or additional secretaries, if authorized by chief accounting officer, may also appoint minor procurement committee, to carry out procurement actions for small contracts. So in the department, there are so many uh, small purchasing contracts will be there. For each and every contracts, it is difficult to appoint procurement committee every time, all the time. So therefore, the secretary to the ministry as a chief accounting officer can appoint minor procurement committee for such small value purchases. And ministry procurement committee, minor committees, shall have 3 members. It also has 3 members. 2 senior officers may be appointed as a chairperson or alternate this chairperson. So 2 people will be appointed as chairperson. At a time, 1 member, out of these 2 members, 1 person can be participated as a chairperson. Say Mr. X and Mr. Y are appointed as a chairperson of the procurement committee, minor committee. At a time, only 1 person, X or Y, can be participate in the procurement committee as chairman. If X absent, Y will be present. If Y absent, X will be present. Either of these 2 officers shall be chairperson. Other 2 members, so 1 member is a chairman, other 2 members shall be the staff officers. For each such member, a suitable alternate members may be appointed. So 2 people will be appointed in addition to the chairman. If the members will not participate in the meeting, in advance they have to nominate the alternative persons for the 2 members. Either the member or the alternate member may serve in the committee. The procurement liaison officer, it may be in communication officer, a coordinator. The procurement liaison officer of procuring entity shall be the secretary. If liaison officer is unavailable, senior officer from the ministry may be serve as the secretary. Right? So those 2 members and 1 chairman, in addition to that 3, and the liaison officer should be present there, and he should work as secretary to that committee. However, the chief accounting officer may increase the number of members in this ministry procurement committee, minor committee, by including additional subject specialists and make determination without the assistance of technical evaluation committee. Now we'll see the department procurement committee. At the top, cabinet appointed procurement committee. that is cabinet level, and the another one is at ministry level, ministry procurement committee, and this one the departmental procurement committee. This purchase is on the department level. The chief accounting officer may appoint departmental procurement committees annually for different agencies or different categories of components. So the departmental procurement committee shall have 3 members. The head of the department shall be the chairperson. Out of 3, head of the department will be the chairperson of procurement committee, and 1 member shall be the senior officer from the procuring entity or one who is knowledgeable in the subject matter of procurement under consideration. All right, and another member should be a senior person who should have enough knowledge regarding the subject matter, that's mean procurement. And the third member, 1 member shall be coming from line ministry in the rank of senior assistant secretary or a director on par. So, right, first the chairman is the department head, and the second person is the senior officer in the department, and who should have an expert in purchasing, and the third member is the member from the line ministry. Right, 1 member shall be come from the line ministry and his rank of the senior assistant secretary. The chairperson of technical evaluation committee or his nominee shall elected from the amongst the technical evaluation committee member shall participate all the meetings for departmental procurement committee to make clarifications. In addition to the 3 members, the chairman or his nominee of technical evaluation committee should represent there for any clarifications. Senior officer from the procuring entity shall be the non-member secretary. Again, a senior officer from procuring entity shall be the non-member secretary. The request for the appointment of departmental procurement committee shall be made to the chief accounting officer by the head of the department or project director as appropriate. Now we'll see the minor procurement committee under the departmental procurement committee. The chief accounting officer or additional secretaries or head of the department, if they are authorized so by chief accounting officer, may also appoint a minor procurement committee, under the department procurement committee to carry out procurement actions for small amount contracts. The number of members in departmental procurement committee, a minor committee, shall have 3 where, so it also has 3 members. Among these 3 members, so 1 person will be appointed as a chairman from 2 members. Right? The 2 members will be appointed as a chairman, but at the time only 1 person can be act as a chairperson. Right? 2 senior staff officer may be appointed as a chairperson, alternate chairperson. Either of these 2 officers shall be the chairperson. Other 2 members shall be the staff officers. For each such members, a suitable alternate member may be appointed. Either the member or the alternate member may serve in the committee. Said 1 person is a chairperson who should be a senior officer out of 2 members, 2 officers, and other 2 members will be the staff officer in the procuring entity. So 1 member shall be from procuring entity, one who is knowledgeable in subject matter of procurement under the consideration. So out of these 2 members, 2 staff officers, 1 officer should have an expert in procurement. However, the chief accounting officer may increase the number of members by including additional subject specialists and make determination without the assistance of technical evaluation committee.